Now that you have found some peer-reviewed articles for your research assignment, it's time to start reading. This can seem like a daunting task. Peer-reviewed articles can be long and include information you may not understand. So why do we use them? We use peer-reviewed articles for several reasons. First, other researchers tend to see peer-reviewed articles as more reliable because they're evaluated by experts in the same field. Second, peer-reviewed articles usually present more recent research than books. Third, peer-reviewed articles are written so that other researchers can replicate the experiment or data collection method. Lastly, peer-reviewed articles are written so both the writers and readers are following and participating in the research conversation. As a student, you also get to participate in the research conversation. Reading peer-reviewed articles now gives you practice for writing them and reading them in the future. Many times your research paper assignments will require similar formatting and requirements to the format of your research of a peer-reviewed article. And the best way to become a better writer is to read more. Reading peer-reviewed articles may also give you some practice in the discipline of perseverance. While you will most likely not understand everything you read in a peer-reviewed article, there are tips for reading them to make it a little bit easier. Also, remember that a biology researcher reading a peer-reviewed article on a literature topic probably won't understand everything they're reading either. Each subject area has its own special vocabularies and ways of writing that might be challenging for someone from a different field, even if both people are researchers in their own field. First, you don't have to read the article in order just because that's how we usually read. Keep a pen and highlighter handy if you're reading a printed copy, or use annotation tools in the digital copy. It is your choice to read printed or digital. Both are the same. 3. Remember the abstract we talked about when we were doing the database searching? That's still important. The abstract is the summary and the best place to start reading. 4. Most scientific peer-reviewed articles will include sections. Each of these sections has a specific purpose. So let's look at them in an actual article. The introduction gives a reason for doing the research and writing the article. Many times, the authors will present their research questions or thesis in the introduction. The literature review, which this article doesn't have one and not all will, is the section where the researchers explain the existing research. You might notice that the introduction of this article has lots of citations, so they incorporated some of their literature review work in the introduction. In a literature review, the researchers make connections and ask questions about what has already been published on the topic. This section connects past research to current research. Materials and Methods section explains the experiment or data gathering process. The researcher will include who the study participants were, what information was collected or tested, and why they did the experiment the way they did. The Results section is the statistics-heavy section where the researcher presents their findings. They provide charts and data from their experiments. The Discussion section helps explain the data collected and connects it to the existing research, the researcher's hypothesis, or research questions. The researcher or author might give next steps or areas for further research. The Conclusion section briefly explains what the article was about. This may include how the research can be applied in other situations, or just a quick summary. Sometimes articles combine the conclusion and discussion sections. The Bibliography or Reference or maybe Works Cited section lists all the sources the researcher used and read as they wrote the paper and did their experiment. As we already mentioned, starting with the abstract is best. You'll want to keep an eye out for the author's key propositions. The propositions are statements of what the authors believe to be true. You may notice them throughout the article. The researcher may follow one of these patterns. Ask a question, give evidence, then state the key proposition, or state the key proposition in the form of a thesis statement, then provide evidence and restate the key proposition. After you make note of the key propositions, you'll want to read the conclusion because that's the author's final statements, findings, and beliefs. The rest of the article should connect to their final thoughts. 7. You may want to read the introduction then, followed by the literature review. Then you may want to read the methods and discussion sections and end with the results. You can look at the bibliography at any point while you're reading the paper. Skimming the bibliography for titles that might be relevant is a good way to use the article you already found to find additional research. As you're reading, you'll want to ask questions about what is written. These questions can be something you don't understand or you want to find out more, or questions that connect you to another topic, idea, or theme. You'll want to write down these connections you're making between this article and other things you have read or know. You can circle or highlight words you don't know and look up their definitions. You'll want to highlight or note in some way the key findings of the paper or maybe the answers to the research questions asked in the article. If you notice the article cited or quoted another article that you want to research or read, you'll want to highlight that one so you can then find it in the bibliography later. These are the articles you would look up. If you don't understand everything, that's okay. You can skim some sections and still understand most of the article, and usually enough for your research assignment. The more you read peer-reviewed articles, the more comfortable you will become with their format. This may also make it easier to understand. Also know that it is okay to ask questions of others. Maybe you don't understand some of the statistics, but you have a friend who is more knowledgeable in statistics. You can ask them to help you understand. After you finish reading the article, take time to write your own summary of the key findings and information you want to use from the article in your research assignment. This will save you time when you come back to write your research paper. If you need assistance with finding articles, reading the articles, or just any part of the research process, schedule a research coach appointment and a librarian is happy to help you.